Hi, you're listening to Redneck Theology, a short program providing a common sense look at Christianity. I'm your host, Bill Whitty. Questions or comments may be emailed to rednecktheology@gmail.com. Now, on with the broadcast.
Oh, it's that time again. Or many might say,
Ew, it's that time again.
the debate begins again for a few days, and then will be dropped for another year.
Yeah, well, okay, enough of the eerie voice. I don't do it that well anyway. Feelings will be hurt. Tempers may flare. Accusations will be made. And some may even change churches or religious attitudes or affiliations because of it. And then next year, about the same time, it all starts over again. The question many preachers will not address for fear of offending people. Should a Christian celebrate Halloween? Or can a Christian celebrate Halloween? Or is it wrong for a Christian to celebrate Halloween? And all the different forms of inquiry if Christians and Halloween can coexist in any form or fashion. The fact that so-called debate even exists could be taken as a clue to the answer. But nonetheless, it goes on. This broadcast will likely offend several people. That's not my intent. Most of my extended family will, no doubt, renew their efforts to pray me back into the faith if they listen to this. At some point, some will turn off the broadcast, assuming I'm just another one of those Halloween-bashing Christians. Others will listen for ammunition to use in their attack, and some will listen out of curiosity. I hope many will maintain an openness to seeking the will of God and continue to listen. In any case, this is what God's given me to share, so here we go. In addressing the question of Halloween, celebrations or participations, we might also ask if it's acceptable to take part in an All Souls Day or All Saints Day celebration. Now, that may be an uncommon terminology to some of you, but bear with me, all right? Like many celebrations, Christian and pseudo-Christian or Christian-like groups started an observance to combat what they saw as a heathen or pagan and or satanic festival. Many of our present-day celebrations started as an alternative to a non-Christian event. I'm all in favor of taking time to honor God. I do find it odd, however, that so many of our holidays resulted as a rebellion against non-Christian counterparts. But anyway, the name Halloween came from the establishment of a celebration back in the 1500s by Pope Gregory. On November 1st, he instituted this celebration to honor all the martyred saints. They called it All Saints' Day. Later, the Catholic Church celebrated another day, All Souls' Day, on November 2nd. The 2 days were later combined to be celebrated on November 1st, calling it All Hallows' Day. Halloween meant the evening before All Hallows' Day, or All Hallows' Eve. The origin reminds me of the boy who didn't get invited to the birthday party of the most popular kid in class. So he retaliated. He threw a party, an even bigger party the next day, inviting everyone to come and take part of it. The early celebrations of All Saints' Day, or All Souls' Day, or All Hallows' Day mimicked the pagan celebrations of the dead on October 31st by dressing up in costumes like the pagans. The church, however, did not want to do it that way. They wanted to commemorate the sainted dead. So they would dress like some declared saint, or like someone who had been martyred for their faith. Over time, biblical characters entered into the mix. With the feasting and celebrations, it was hard to distinguish between the pagan and the Catholic forms of celebration in time. Now, granted, originally the feasts were drastically different. They had sacrifices, they were different in how the celebrations addressed the deity. But over time, the Catholics began to take part in the non-offensive trick-or-treat and costume parties, and then they began to celebrate a Mass the next day for the sainted dead. Many Christians wanted nothing to do with the Catholic Church or their feast, but they didn't want themselves or their children to miss out on the celebrating. Since Halloween no longer was celebrated by much of the world as a pagan feast, at least not outwardly, but it was more of a night of fun and frolicking, and it seemed all right to participate and dress up in some disguise. Sure, there was some evil associated with it. There were times that bad things happened on that night, but it just didn't seem that bad because it wasn't happening that often. and it wasn't really being associated with evil so much anymore. Over time, though, more dark and scary costumes came into vogue, along with the idea of embracing some of the dark aspects of the original festivals. Graves, ghosts, monsters, evil beings, walking dead, vampires, all sorts of scary icons were added back into it. And although the church fought against it for years, more and more members took part in the fun part of it. It was only one night a year. They didn't celebrate it as an unholy feast, and they didn't want to be oddballs either. Churches even started having their own celebrations with candy, and some would dress up as biblical characters and have games, and it was all to offer an alternative. In a way, it kind of seemed like history repeating itself. Today, many Christians, the pseudo-Christians, the Christian-appearing groups, rationalize that participation in Halloween is all right by saying that they're not celebrating the darker side or meanings of the holiday's origin. By the way, if you're interested in its origins, simply Google Halloween origins to see the history. Modern-day witches who call themselves good witches or white witches even dispute the original pagan festival called Samhain. They even existed, or that the god Samhain existed. Some historians give credible evidence, though, that the celebration, complete with human sacrifices, dates back to the time of the Tower of Babel. You can find abundant history easily by just researching it, like I suggested. But anyway, not to get too far off topic, since they don't participate in the darker side or seek communication with the dead or dress in dark costumes, a lot of Christians feel it's just a fun time, especially for their kids. And they would be standing out from the crowd and making their children and themselves objects of ridicule by not taking part of it for religious reasons. They might even be thought of as judgmental or holier than thou for doing so. Now take a look at something that was addressed by the Apostle Paul. He was addressing the subject of Christians buying meat that Gentiles had offered to idols. And he made a rather profound statement about the connection. You can find it in the first epistle to the Corinthians, the 10th chapter and verse 20. He writes there, "But I say that the things which the Gentiles sacrifice, they sacrifice to devils and not to God. And I would not that ye should have fellowship with devils." Paul made it clear Christians should not knowingly have a part of the Gentile sacrifice for the sake of not being mistakenly identified as approving of it. He told them if they were at a feast, not to ask where the food came from, but if it were made known it had been sacrificed to a Gentile god, to excuse themselves from partaking. That's in the same epistle, but chapter 10 and verse 28. It says, "But if any man say unto you, This is offered in sacrifice to idols, eat not for his sake that shewed it, and for conscience sake. For the earth is the Lord's, and the fullness thereof." They were directed to stand out from the crowd. They might have been accused of being judgmental, but they were to separate themselves from the appearance of partaking in something unholy. Oh, wow. Did that change over the years someplace? I mean, we can look in the book of Leviticus, 11th chapter, 44th and 45th verses, 19th chapter, the 2nd verse, the 20th chapter, the 7th verse, 20th chapter, again the 26th verse, and several other Old Testament books where it says to be holy because God is holy. Now, for those that might argue, well, that's only in the Old Testament, as if it wasn't good enough for today, we could take a look in the first epistle of Peter, the 1st chapter, and verses 15 and 16, where it says, "But as he which hath called you is holy, so be ye holy in all manner of conversation, because it is written, Be ye holy, for I am holy." Now, some might argue, well, that's only one place in the Old Testament, as if God has to tell us something more than once for it to be valid. And others would say, well, Peter's referring to the Old Testament as it doesn't mean it applies right now. Well, let's face it. Some just want to argue to try to justify their position, rather than accept what God says. We are to stand out from the non-Christians. The very fact we do not participate in Halloween may open the conversation to explain the good news of the gospel with someone. It may give us the opportunity to share why we're choosing not to participate. Not that we can't, but that we're making a choice not to, and here's the reason. And that's why many Christians don't participate. I know there'll be Christians and non-Christians take offense at this. I said that in the beginning. And if you're fussing at the voice you're hearing right now, just ask yourself, why? Is it truly because Halloween is something you use to glorify God in some way? Or are you simply avoiding the backlash from others who want you to participate and who participate themselves? Could it be you're afraid you'll miss out on the fun of masquerading as someone else? Or maybe the overeating of unhealthy food and treats that you and your kids can get for free? Examine your reasons honestly and list how taking part will glorify God and lead others to see Christ living in you. I think you'll have your answer. Romans, the 14th chapter and verse 5, speaks of being fully persuaded in your own mind. This doesn't mean justifying our actions, but simply that we are to be 100% certain God is okay with what we're doing. If any doubt at all exists in your mind as to whether or not to celebrate Halloween, or do anything else for that matter, you have your answer. Why even take the chance of knowingly offending God? It's not that God wants us to miss out on fun. He simply wants us to have fun in a way that includes Him. If you're not already a Christian and you'd like to put God first in your life, actually you can do that right now. Simply pray with me and ask Jesus to become your Lord, which that's actually an old English term meaning boss. If you mean the words from your heart, you can pray out loud with me right now. I say out loud because the Bible tells us that with the mouth, confession is made unto salvation. That's in Romans 10th chapter and 10th verse if you want to look. If you're interested in becoming a Christian, let's pray. Dear God, I want Jesus to be my boss. I admit I have fallen short of what you want for me. I have sinned. That makes me a sinner. I ask you to forgive my sins. I accept Jesus' death on the cross as sacrifice for my sins. And I now commit my life to you. With your help, I will stop sinning. If you meant that, then take a moment to tell God thank you in your own words for making you a Christian just now. I'd love for you to send me an email also letting me know you made this choice. It's important to tell others what you just did and to join with other Christians in worshiping God and learning more about Him. If you can access a Bible, I suggest you start reading the book of John and read a little bit every day. While you're at it, why not use this Halloween as an opportunity to tell folks about Jesus? He can make any night a hallowed eve.
That's our program for today. I'm Bill Whitty, thanking you for listening to Redneck Theology. Your questions or comments may be emailed to rednecktheology@gmail.com. Please join me again next time for more Redneck Theology.